Hey everybody, Plushie here. With the 26 million download campaign comes a bunch of rerun banners of servants that people absolutely adore. I guess this is how Lysengo makes their money now. And today I want to talk about one servant in particular that I absolutely adore, Ibuki Douji. I know I just simped all over her during summer, but with her banner upcoming, I think it would be the perfect chance to talk a little bit about our favorite Mama Douji Saber, especially considering the fact that she's also going to be coming up for NA at the end of this year. So let's talk a little bit about her skills. Her first skill is a 3-turn 3-time 40% attack up, as well as a 50 MP battery. Now 50 MP batteries, as I've always said, is never bad. It helps her fire off her MP really quickly, being able to fire off her MP with an MP start CE without any support, and of course, most importantly, be able to function with the double Koyanskaya looping system. Now the 40% attack up functions extremely well in farming conditions, as you are not expected to use a face card during those farming sessions, and it would just be a straight up 40% attack up for 3 turns. However, for normal circumstances, it is kind of awkward because you kind of have to not use her card if you want to save those for her buster crits, but overall still a pretty decent skill. Her skill 2 is a 30% buster up for 3 turns, a 30% defense up for 3 turns, as well as a 20 star bomb at a cooldown of 5. This skill has an extremely low cooldown, meaning it has a very low downtime, only having a 2-turn downtime even if we don't consider Koyanskaya. When we put Koyanskaya into the mix, this skill can even be stacked twice quite easily. And this skill, even though the number at first doesn't seem very impressive, it does last for 3 turns, and it is just a very good consistent source of damage, as well as soft defense, because Ibuki Douji is quite fragile, and this 30% defense up does help her quite a bit. The 20 star bomb, once again, always good. It's just helping her to get a head start at turn 1, especially if you're considering supports that need stars to activate their effects, such as Miss Crane or Calamity Jane. Finally, her third skill is a 1-turn MP seal, a 50% crit up for 3 turns, and a 50% power mod against undead enemies. Now, this is once again a pretty solid skill. The MP seal is kind of not that significant, as you will usually be using this skill for the crit up. 50% crit up for 3 turns, even though, after a couple of years, this seems to become the norm. But back in the day, this is something that is really insane, and even up to today, having 3 turns of a 50% crit up is extremely solid. It helps bolster her already very solid triple buster deck in terms of crit damage. And then finally, it has a 50% anti-undead power mod for 3 turns. A 50% power mod is really powerful, and especially if it lasts for 3 turns. It affects both her face cards and MP. However, Undead is kind of an awkward trait to hit. Unless you're using Summer Woo with her, no servants contain the Undead trait, so she's not going to be able to utilize this in most CQs. Most of the time, this is actually going to hit some kind of trash mob that she will kill anyways. So this skill is kind of niche because of the Undead. It's gonna hit a couple of bosses really well, but most of the time it's just going to be overkill for stuff like skeletons and ghosts. But once again, just for the 50% crit up for 3 turns, it is already a really decent skill. And let's take a look at her passives, I suppose. I have already talked about her passives because her most notable ones are being inherited by her summer version, but I think these functions way better on here, her Saber version. Her Dragonkind EX boosts her buster performance by 12%, which she has a buster MP as well as 3 buster cards, so this is a huge bolster to her overall damage, as well as having a 200 damage cut. While the 200 damage cut basically does nothing on a Berserker that has effectively 7000 HP, on a Saber who has a 3-turn defense up to combo with it actually might make a little bit of a difference. And then of course she has Snake God's Essence. The divinity part of the skill is just not significant, like 99% of the time you won't be using that flat damage plus, but the 20% buff removal resistance, once again, is really good or really bad depending on how you like to play this game. Sometimes in CQs, you simply don't want to waste a slot to bring Santa Nightingale, and this skill can allow you to push further your team comp to include all damage boosters, instead of having to include Nightingale, who is also a damage booster, but not top tier, just to sort of circumvent this buff removal effect. Now, normally I wouldn't bet on it, I wouldn't count on it, but for people who would like to do extreme runs for challenge quests where you need the absolute tops damage, this is going to be significant. Let's take a look at her MP. Her MP is a AoE Buster MP that ignores invul for a turn before doing damage, as well as deal damage that ignores defense. Her overcharge effect is a Buster down for 3 turns after damage, and it scales from 20% all the way to 40%. She has my favorite type of MP. I have talked about this when doing the Alter Ego Kiara review, that I absolutely adore servants that have full ignore MPs, because there are so many CQs that have these unremovable defense ups and invuls that you just have to absolutely bring very specific servants to deal with. Specific servants such as Calamity Jane and Sherlock Holmes don't necessarily combo well with every composition, and having a servant with the MP that contains both of these effects allows you to have very flexible team comps. So I really like this effect once again. And then finally, the Buster down really isn't amazing, obviously because it doesn't boost your damage immediately with her MP. However, if you're facing CQs with multiple break bars, then this damage definitely stacks up after you've used her MP a couple of times. Honestly, there isn't much for me to say about Ibuki Douji. She is an extremely straightforwardly good servant. She is a really decent farmer with double Koyanskaya, owing to the ability to loop her skill 1 and skill 2, ending up with a 80% attack up and a 60% buster up on the last wave. And of course, if you put her in non-standard 3-turn looping teams, she can also perform well because of that very big 50 MP battery, as well as a star bomb that she can crit with if some waves demands it. Her damage is monstrous, to say the least. Her MP, obviously unupgraded, but still really strong owing to her very powerful skills and her passive, and also her having the highest attack stat out of all SSR Sabers in the entire game. She also has a triple buster deck that ensures her to also have a very powerful single target damage with those meaty buster crits. Her entire skill set focuses on dealing out massive damage, especially on the face card part. Unfortunately, there isn't much interesting experiences I can share with you in terms of CQs regarding Ibuki Douji, because she destroys every single one of them without breaking a sweat. I rarely find this servant lacking in damage whenever I bring her into CQ TAs, and that is very impressive considering she is only MP2 and I did not grill her. She is also very comfortable to work with in terms of team building, because you don't have to think about how to fit in Calamity Jane as well as 3 extra star bombs just to proc her skill 3 effect. Once again, as someone who only has a MP2 ungrilled copy of Ibuki Douji, I do find her falling off in damage in some really extreme CQs that require a lot of damage. But that is just how it is when you want to TA something that isn't meant for you to TA. You need just super high MP levels of the servant. So overall, no matter if it's main story content, especially ones that are Lancers, or it's a CQ that demands a lot of AoE MP spamming, Ibuki Douji is just going to destroy it for you most of the time, even if she's doing neutral. If you only have her at MP1, you might find her MP damage a little bit lacking, but there is no problem because you can make it up with some face card damage very easily. So really powerful and really comfortable to work with servant in CQs. I am talking in more of a TA perspective or a turn attack or CQ min-term perspective, so Ibuki is going to be even more appealing to me. If you're doing slow clears, obviously she's going to have some problems because she has some trouble surviving, and she also has a triple buster deck that doesn't fare well with support servants, but overall I think she's just still really solid. If you don't expect to really stall the fight for super long, I think Ibuki's gonna handle it with no problem at all. So yeah, Ibuki Douji. Straightforward, strong, starts fast, high damage, high single target, high AoE, ignores all gimmicks, farms well with Koyanskaya, has very high attack, has very beautiful body. What else can I say, right? This servant is just so good. But why isn't she already touted as one of the most OP Sabers ever, and everybody's going for her like everybody's rolling for Morgan or Arjuna Alter? Well, here's the problem. Competition. In the Buster farming front, she is competing with the prime Buster Looper, not just in Sabers, but one of the best Buster Loopers in the game period, Artoria. Artoria's short cooldown on her battery allows you to use double coin Skya comps without having to tie it to an Atlas Mystic Code, and that has two very big advantages. One, you don't have to level your Atlas Mystic Code, because it's absolutely worthless. And the second advantage is having an offensive Mystic Code that can further bolster her MP damage on the last wave. Even without that extra bolster with the Mystic Code, she has a upgraded MP as opposed to Ibuki, who doesn't have an upgraded MP, and also a super powerful one-turn giant burst skill in the form of her skill 2. She can even change all the cards in her deck into Buster with that skill, so if you really need some extra damage, face card damage on that last wave, she can provide it as well, even more consistently than Ibuki Douji. But she isn't even the biggest problem, because that is just farming. In terms of overall performance, Muramasa is standing right there, one banner away from the Ibuki banner. Muramasa, despite being an Arts AoE Saber, has a lot of common traits that is shared with Ibuki. He has Invo Pierce on his skill, he has a defense ignoring MP, he has a 50 MP battery, a Star Bomb, and a 3-turn crit up. He is basically a Arts version of Ibuki who has gimmicks to ignore defensive buffs on enemies, as well as being able to do both good AoE damage and single target crit damage. But the difference comes in the form of Castoria. Being able to be paired up with Castoria instantly increases your value, because Castoria can do very well both defensive and offensively. Castoria can cover all the weaknesses Muramasa has, which is the same as Ibuki, a lack of a hard defense. She can also make up for the lack of damage compared to Ibuki in Muramasa, as Muramasa has a more HP heavy stat spread by looping his MP. And especially considering Muramasa's MP gets stronger and stronger the more you loop it, eventually Muramasa is going to outdamage Ibuki. Due to the overabundance of Buster support servants, Ibuki Douji has a lot of good supports that fit her. Servants like Koyan Light, even Koyan Dark because Ibuki is a demonic beast, and Merlin. All of these servants can sort of diversify Ibuki's team build. However, Ibuki's playstyle never strays away from trying to finish the fight as quick as possible, especially shown in double coin light comps, where she just tries to kill you by stacking her skills twice, very quickly. Even though Merlin exists, without a powerhouse support like Castoria, Ibuki still in general struggles to keep in the fight for long. Unlike Muramasa, who has the flexibility to choose to take it slower and try to drag on the fight for longer, especially for CQs that are like super long gauntlet quests such as the Summer 5 CQ, Ibuki Douji really will get left hanging there as long as those buff turns gets over. So especially for viewers that are watching that only plays in an NA server, I cannot in my good faith recommend you to roll Ibuki over Muramasa, especially if you already have Castoria, if we only talk about gameplay. Rest assured, Ibuki Douji is still an extremely solid Saber servant. She has everything you want in an AoE servant. She can do good damage in farming, she can tackle a lot of CQs by ignoring a bunch of gimmicks, and she can dish out massive damage with her great stats, her incredible deck, and her really solid skill set. She is simple, and she can't do much, but she can't do a lot of damage, and she has a lot of ways to ensure that damage can land, and she is an absolute menace because of that. Anyways, hope you enjoyed this video, and good luck on rolling Ibuki Douji if you decided to do it. I'll see you guys in the next one.